This section is section 6.3b, and we're going to be multiplying radicals in this section. The biggest thing to remember with this is that we're going to have the same root or index, and when you do that, you're going to multiply the coefficients and then multiply the radicands. To help people remember this, I try to tell them, think of that radical sign as being kind of a barrier, that those numbers are segregated. So if you have 2 with a radical of 2 inside, and you're going to multiply a radical of 2, you have to multiply what's outside with what's outside, and then what's inside with what's inside. And then you have to evaluate, okay, is there something inside when I multiply? Can I take that out? And in this case, we have 2 times 2 on the outside. In fact, actually, I go one step further. I always say, do the signs first. We have a positive times a positive, which of course is a positive. Then 2 times 1 is 2. And then we have inside here, we have 2 times 2. But we know that with an index of 2, pairs will come out. So we have 2 times 2 on the outside. And that answer is 4. Pretty cool, huh? So let's go ahead and try some of these. And we're going to, and I know you've done this before, we're going to FOIL, which is just a fancy word for distributing. So we have 1 square root of 5. Well, actually, I added the 1 here just so that you know there's 1 outside here and 1 outside here. So, having this, oops, we actually have that as the problem. They're multiplying each other. We want to FOIL, which means we're going to take the first and multiply it through. And that gives us the outside and outside. And then the inside to the first one is the inside. And then last times last is the out. So if we distribute this one through to both of them, we have positive times positive, which is positive. 1 times 1 is 1. And then we have the radical of 5 times 5 inside here. And we have, since our radical, our index or our root is 2, we know that we're looking for pairs, and 1 times 5 is 5. So we actually lose the radical on that one because we could pull the 5 out and it leaves nothing inside. However, on this one, this is when you have to be very careful when you're doing the outer times the outer. Sine times sine, positive times positive is positive. We have 1 times 4 is 4. And then we have this radicand, and there's no radicand over here, so it's just going to be a 1. So we have square root of 5. Now let's do the inside and the inside. Sine times sine, positive times positive is positive. Coefficient times coefficient, 7 times 1 is 7. Then radicand times radicand. And so we don't have a radicand over here, so we just have this one right here. And then for our last term, sine times sine, positive times positive is positive. 7 times 4 is 28. Now again, we're looking for like terms. We actually have 2 different terms in this one. We have our whole numbers, and then we have our like terms because they have the same radicand inside and the same index. These are like terms and those are like terms. So we have 28. That is 33. 28 plus 5 is 33. And then 7 plus 4 is 11 square root of 5. The only time, and that's our answer. Remember what you're doing. When you're adding, the variables are just like labels, but when you're multiplying, you're actually multiplying them through. You can multiply, because they're kind of segregated, what's inside multiplies each other and what's outside multiplies each other. You don't want to try to mix them. You don't, like for instance on this one, we don't want to say, okay, we've got the square root of 35 now. The 7 is clearly outside and the 5 is clearly inside, so you don't want to multiply those two together. Let's do another example. We have 2 square root of 2 plus the square root of 3, and we're going to multiply that. 5 square root of 2 plus 2 square root of 3. Okay. We're going to do first times first. First thing you want to do is look at your signs. They're both positive, so we're going to have a positive number. 5 times 2 is 10. Then we have, inside we have a radical of 2, a radical of 2, but we know we have a pair, so we're going to multiply this times 2, because square root of 4 is 2. Now let's do the outside times the outside. 2 times, well, positive times positive is positive. 2 times 2 is 4. Now we have inside here, we have the square root of 2 times 3. We don't have a matching pair, so we can't pull anything out. So this one ends up being, inside is a 6, because you multiply them back out. Now let's do the inside. Sine times sine, positive times positive is positive. Don't forget, this is a 1 on the outside, so 1 times 5 is 5. And then again, we have what's inside the radical. We have 3 times 2. There's not a pair to bring out, so we have to just multiply them. Now we do our last one. Positive times positive is positive. 1 times 2 is 2. But then we have the radical where we're taking the radical of 9, or square root of 9 actually, which is the same as multiplying it by 3, because we have a pair of 3's that come out. So, let's write this a little clearer so that we can see what we're doing. We have 10 times 2 is 20, plus 4 square root of 6, plus 5 square root of 6, and then we have plus 6. So our like terms in this one, we have our numbers, and then we have our radicands inside are the same, plus our roots are the same, or our indexes are the same. So these are like terms as well. So our answer here, 20 plus 6 is 26, and then we're going to add the, because we're adding, we're just do the coefficients. So we have 9, and then the square root of 6 just is our label that goes on with that one. And we're done. Okay, let's try some more. We have the square root of 5x plus 4 times the square root of 5x plus 4. Right. On this one we have square root of 5x squared, and really when you square a square root it gets rid of it. So we have 5x here. Then we have our inside. So they're both positive, so it's positive. Outside times outside, inside times inside. Same with this one. It's positive because it's both positive. Outside times outside, right here. And then the inside of the radicand times the inside of the radicand. And if it doesn't exist, it's just times 1. Then we have the last times the last, and 4 times 4 is 16. So, like terms. Do we have any like terms? Yes, we do. Our radicands here are exactly the same. Same index, same radicand that's inside. So we can add those. We have an x here, but there's not an x over here, so we don't have any like terms to add to this, so it's 5x. And then we have 4 plus 4 is 8. And the 5x, the square root of 5x is our tag for that. And then plus 16. And we're done because all of our like terms are combined. All right, this looks a little simpler because there's not as much there. Square root of x minus the square root of y times the square root of x minus the square root of y. So we want to FOIL. We want to do the first, outer, inner, last. First times first, which is square root of x squared, which is x. Then we have outer times outer. We have positive times a negative, so this one's going to be negative. And we've got 1 times 1 is 1. And then inside we have xy, because we don't have a pair to bring out. Now let's do the inner ones. Negative times positive is negative. 1 times 1 is 1. Then we have inside the radicand is x times y. Get in the habit of writing your variables the same way, or like in alphabetical order. That way it's easier to spot if you have like terms, because if you have xy here and yx here, you might miss that those are in fact like terms. Now going back, let's go ahead and do our last one. Negative times negative is positive. 1 times 1 is 1, but we have inside, we have y squared, taking the square root, of course we get just a y. Alright, now to finish off, we add our like terms, and like I pointed out earlier, those are like terms. So we have x, and we have 2 of these negatives now. And then plus y. And since all our like terms are together, there are no more like terms, we're done. Let's try this one. We're not working with any variables on this one, we're just working with numbers. Square root of 6, and we're going to multiply it by that. So we want to do FOIL. First times first. Okay, we'd have 7 times 7 inside, so we would pull out a 7. And they're both positive, so it's positive. Outer times outer, which positive times negative is a negative. And this is interesting because we don't have any pairs, so it'd be 42 inside. This one, we're ready to do the inner times inner. Positive times positive is positive. And then we have 6 times 7, which is 42. Now let's do the last one. Outer times outer, or not, sign times sign. Positive times negative is negative. 1 times 1 is 1. But then we have a square root of 6 times square root of 6. So we're going to have 6 squared, square rooted, which basically says, all right, we're going to be subtracting 6. Do we have any like terms? Yes, we do. We have our numbers, and we also have these here. The radicand inside is exactly the same, and so is the index, so those are like terms. Interestingly, we have a negative 1 here and a positive 1 here, so those are just going to cancel out, because if you have one and you take one away, you don't have anything left. So our answer for this one would just be 7 minus 6, which is 1. And that is our answer. Let's mix them up. We've got radical of y minus the radical of x. Actually, I'm saying that wrong. Square root of y minus the square root of x. times 4 times the square root of y minus 4 times the square root of x. There we go. Let's do FOIL. First times first. Positive times positive is positive. 1 times 4 is 4. Then we have inside, we have y times y, which when you have the square root of y squared, you get y. So we're just going to bring that out. Now we're going to do the O part. So we have positive times negative, which is negative. 1 times 4 is 4. Then inside the radical, we have x and y. Now let's do the I part, inner times inner. Give you a different color here. Negative times positive is negative. 1 times 4 is 4. And then our radical has x and y. And we can't pull anything out because they're different. So we're done with that one. Now for our last one, which is the L part, which is last times last. We've got negative times negative, which is positive. 1 times 4 is 4. Then we have inside the radical as x squared, and we know we have a pair of x's, so when x will come out. So looking at our like terms, we only have the one y. These are like terms because the inside is the same and the index is the same. And then we have that one. So these are the only terms that we can add together. And that gives us 4y. They're both minus, so negative 4 minus 4 is negative 8. Square root of xy plus 4x. We're done because we have no more like terms. Let's see. We have 4 square root of x plus 6, and all of that times the square root of x plus 2. Again, we're following the same steps as we have before. We're going to FOIL by taking the first times the first. They're positive times positive, which is positive. 4 times 1, because we want what's outside first. 4 times 1 is 4. And then we have x times x is x squared. We have 2 x's inside, and since our index is 2, we can pull out an x. Okay. Now let's do the outer times outer. Positive times positive is positive. 4 times 2 is 8. And then we don't have a square root on this side, so that's like timesing that by 1. Now we're going to do the inner times inner. Sine times sine, positive times positive is positive. 6 times 1 is 6. Since we don't have a radical over here, it's just going to be 1 times this radical, which is square root of x. Then our last one is positive times positive is positive. 6 times 2 is 12. Okay, do we have any like terms? Well, we don't have any more x terms that are on the outside, but we do have the radical with the radicand of x and the index of 2 here. These are the like terms, so we can add those. And these don't have any more terms, so we can just drop them down. 8 plus 6 is 14. And those are just, since we're adding, it's just a label. We just keep it with it. And bring those down. Since there's no more like terms that we can add together, we're done. Alright. Let's do one more. Plus square root of 5 plus the square root of 6 times 3 minus the square root of 6. Okay, let's FOIL. Take the first one and distribute it through to both, which does the F and the O. So first times first, 5 times 3 is 15. Outer times outer. Sign, go with the signs first. Positive times negative is negative. then we have a 1 on the outside here, so 5 times 1 is 5, and then no radical here, so we've got just the square root of x. Now let's do our inner times inner. Positive times positive is positive. 3 times 1 is 3, and then we don't have a radical over here, so it's like it's timesing 1. So we have 6, the square root of 6 for that one. Now, let's do our last one. Negative, or this is negative. Positive times negative is negative. And then we have 1 times 1 is 1. But we have the radical of 6 times 6, which with the pair of 6's, we can bring out a 6. So, looking at our like terms, we have a like term here and here. And since the inside of our radical is 6 on both of these with the same root, those are like terms. So we have, what would that be, 9? 15 minus 6 is 9, and then we have negative 5 plus 3, because remember you just add what's out in front, the coefficients. We get a negative 2 square root of 6. And that's it, that's all. Not too hard, just remember, if you remember to do the signs first, then the outsides and the insides, then you're going to make fewer mistakes.